Sarah led the three Kethmori hunters through a twisted maze of crystal formations and rocky outcroppings, always staying just within sight but never close enough for a clean shot. The combat stimulants in her system had settled into a steady burn, sharpening her senses while keeping her movements fluid and controlled. She could hear every footstep behind her, smell the metallic scent of their bio-armor, feel the vibrations of their pursuit through the ground. The lead hunter, the one with the most scars, was growing frustrated. Sarah could tell from the increasing tempo of his clicking communications with the others. They had been chasing her for over an hour, and their prey was proving far more elusive than expected. Humans were supposed to tire quickly in the thin atmosphere of alien worlds. They were supposed to make mistakes when panicked. Sarah Chen was doing neither. She ducked behind a massive boulder and pressed her back against its surface, listening intently. The hunters had split up, trying to flank her position. Standard Kethmori tactics, designed to drive prey into the open where they could be easily killed. But Sarah wasn't following their script. During her reconnaissance of the crash site earlier, she had noticed something the aliens hadn't. The crystalline formations weren't random. They formed a natural amphitheater around a depression in the rock, and the way they were positioned would create acoustic anomalies. Sound would bounce and echo in unexpected ways, making it difficult to pinpoint the source. More importantly, she had found something else among the crystal formations. The remains of a previous hunt. The skeleton was definitely human, picked clean by scavengers and bleached white by the alien sun. But what interested Sarah wasn't the bones themselves, but what lay scattered around them. The remnants of military-grade equipment, including several unused explosive charges. Sarah reached into her pack and pulled out one of the charges she had salvaged. It was a standard breaching explosive, designed to blow through reinforced doors and walls. In the hands of a desperate soldier, it could serve other purposes. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. The Kethmori were closing in, confident they had her cornered. Sarah activated the charge's timer and set it for 30 seconds. Then hurled it as far as she could toward the center of the crystal amphitheater. She was already running when the explosion lit up the alien landscape. The blast sent crystal shards flying in all directions, their razor edges catching the light like deadly prisms. The sound echoed and re-echoed through the formations, creating a cacophony that would mask her movement. More importantly, it would confuse the hunters and force them to regroup. Sarah sprinted through the chaos, using the noise and flying debris as cover. The combat stimulants made everything seem to happen in slow motion, allowing her to dodge falling crystal fragments and navigate the treacherous terrain with inhuman precision. She could see the three hunters struggling to maintain their formation as the echoing explosions disoriented them. The scarred leader raised his weapon and fired, randomly into the dust cloud, energy beams lancing through the air where he thought she might be. His shots went wide, striking crystal formations and sending more deadly fragments spinning through the air. Sarah smiled grimly as she realized the alien was making his first real mistake. He was letting fear cloud his judgment. Sarah circled wide around the amphitheater, moving with the predatory grace that the stimulants had unlocked in her nervous system. She had studied predator behavior extensively during her military training, but now she was experiencing it firsthand. Every muscle in her body was perfectly coordinated, every sense operating at peak efficiency. She was becoming something the Kethmori had never encountered before. A human optimized for hunting. The second explosive charge went off 30 meters to the left of the first, sending another shower of crystal shards through the air. This time, Sarah heard one of the hunters cry out in pain as a fragment found a gap in his bio-armor. The sound was high-pitched and alien, but she recognized it instinctively as the voice of something that was now wounded and vulnerable. Sarah moved toward the sound like a shark following blood in the water. She found the wounded Kethmori crouched behind a crystal formation, green ichor seeping from a gash in his shoulder. His weapon lay several meters away where he had dropped it, and he was trying to apply some kind of emergency medical treatment to the wound. When he saw Sarah emerge from the dust cloud, his mandibles spread wide in shock. For the first time in his hunting career, he was looking at prey that had deliberately sought him out. Sarah didn't hesitate. The tactical knife slid from its sheath into her hand as she lunged forward, the combat stimulants giving her speed and strength beyond normal human limits. The wounded Kethmori tried to raise his secondary weapon, but Sarah was already inside his reach. The knife found the gap between armor plates at his throat, sliding deep into alien flesh. The hunter's eyes widened in disbelief as green blood fountained from the wound. His claws raked desperately at Sarah's combat suit, but the reinforced fabric held. Sarah twisted the blade and pulled it free, stepping back as the massive alien collapsed to the sand, one down. Two to go. The remaining hunters had heard their companion's death cry and were converging on Sarah's position. She could hear them calling to each other in their clicking language, the tone noticeably different now. They weren't hunting anymore. They were trying to survive. Sarah wiped the alien blood from her blade and considered her options. The stimulants would last for perhaps another hour before the crash began, and she needed to finish this before her enhanced abilities faded. The two surviving Kethmori were experienced hunters, who would be far more cautious now that they knew she was dangerous. She needed to separate them. Make them come to her on her terms. Sarah pulled out her emergency beacon and activated it, sending a powerful signal into space. Any ship in the system would be able to detect it, including the Kethmori hunting vessel that had brought these three to the surface. But it would also serve another purpose. The beacon signal would interfere with the hunters' communication equipment, making it difficult for them to coordinate their attacks. It would force them to rely on visual contact, which meant they would have to get closer to her position. Perfect. Sarah moved to higher ground, climbing onto a crystal formation that gave her a commanding view of the amphitheater. From here, she could see both remaining hunters as they stalked through the maze below, their weapons ready but their movements uncertain. The scarred leader was trying to direct his companion through hand signals, but it was clear they were operating outside their comfort zone. The second explosive charge was already in Sarah's hand when the younger hunter passed beneath her position. She dropped it directly into his path and rolled away from the edge of the crystal formation just as it detonated. The blast caught the alien directly in the chest, his bio-armor cracking under the force of the explosion. He staggered backward, ichor streaming from multiple wounds. And Sarah dropped from her perch like an avenging angel. Her knife found his heart. Before he could raise his weapon, the scarred leader stood alone among the crystal formations, his head swiveling back and forth as he searched for his prey. But Sarah was no longer prey. She was the apex predator, and this alien was about to learn what that meant. The hunter's mandibles clicked rapidly as he called out in his own language, probably offering terms of surrender or negotiation. Sarah understood enough Kethmori to know he was promising her a quick death if she gave herself up. She laughed, and the sound echoed through the crystal amphitheater like the cry of something wild and dangerous. The hunter had made his second mistake. He still thought he was dealing with prey. The crimson sand of Kepler 438b stretched endlessly beneath Lieutenant Sarah Chion's boots as she crouched behind a cluster of crystalline formations. Her breath came in measured intervals, each exhale creating a small puff of vapor in the thin atmosphere. The emergency beacon from her crashed dropship had gone silent 3 hours ago, and she knew the aliens would come looking. Sarah's fingers traced the outline of her tactical knife, the only weapon she had left after the crash. Her pulse rifle lay twisted and useless in the wreckage 2 kilometers behind her, along with the bodies of her squad. She was alone on a hostile world, surrounded by creatures that had been hunting humans across the galaxy for sport. The Kethmori were legendary among human colonies. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with chitinous armor plating and 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws, they were apex predators from a death world where only the strongest survived. They had turned hunting into an art form, traveling between star systems to find worthy prey. Humans, with their soft flesh and primitive weapons, had become their favorite quarry. A low growling sound echoed across the barren landscape, followed by the distinctive clicking that Kethmori made when they communicated. Sarah pressed herself deeper into the shadows of the crystal formation, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through a gap in the crystals, she could see them approaching, 3 of them moved with predatory grace across the red sand, their elongated heads swiveling back and forth as they searched for her scent. Their bio-armor gleamed like black oil in the alien sun's light, and energy weapons hummed at their sides. These weren't ordinary Kethmori warriors. The intricate scarification covering their bodies marked them as members of the elite hunting caste. The ones who sought only the most challenging prey. The lead hunter stopped suddenly, raising one clawed hand to halt his companions. His head tilted upward, nostrils flaring as he tested the air. Sarah held her breath, knowing that her human scent would be foreign and distinctive on this world. The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly as he spoke to the others in their guttural language. Sarah had studied Kethmori hunting patterns during her military training. They were methodical, patient, and utterly ruthless. They would track her for days if necessary, wearing her down through exhaustion and fear before moving in for the kill. But there was something they didn't know about Lieutenant Sarah Chun, something that wasn't in any of their databases about human physiology and behavior. The hunters spread out in a standard search pattern, moving with deadly efficiency. Sarah watched them through the crystals, noting their movements, their positioning, the way they communicated through subtle gestures. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, speaking words in Mandarin that had been passed down through generations of her family. Sarah's grandmother had been a soldier too, fighting in the underground resistance during the occupation of Earth's moon colonies. She had taught Sarah that sometimes the hunted must become the hunter, that survival meant more than just staying alive. It meant making your enemies regret ever choosing you as prey. The nearest Kethmori was now only 20 meters away, his massive form casting a long shadow across the sand. His head moved from side to side in a hypnotic rhythm as he searched for signs of her passage. Sarah could see the scars crisscrossing his armor, evidence of countless successful hunts. This one was experienced, dangerous. Sarah's hand moved slowly to the emergency medical kit on her belt. Inside was a single auto-injector filled with combat stimulants, designed to be used only in the most desperate situations. The drugs would flood her system with adrenaline and other chemicals, pushing her human physiology beyond its normal limits for a brief period. It would also make her extremely aggressive and enhance her reflexes to superhuman levels. The Kethmori stepped closer, his clawed foot coming down just meters from her hiding spot. Sarah could hear his breathing, a wet, rasping sound that made her skin crawl. She gripped the auto-injector tightly, waiting for the perfect moment. The alien's head turned toward her position, and she saw his eyes narrow as he detected something in one fluid motion. Sarah jabbed the injector into her thigh and felt the chemicals surge through her bloodstream. The world suddenly became sharper, more vivid. Every sound, every scent, every detail of her surroundings blazed with crystal clarity. Her heart rate spiked, and she felt her muscles tense with barely contained energy. The Kethmori took another step forward, raising his energy weapon. Sarah exploded from her hiding place like a coiled spring, moving faster than she ever had in her life. The alien's eyes widened in surprise as she vaulted over the crystal formation and landed in a crouch just meters away from him. For a moment, hunter and prey stared at each other. The Kethmori's mandibles spread wide in what might have been amusement or anticipation. He had been hunting for over 2 decades, and no prey had ever voluntarily revealed itself to him. This human female was either insane or desperate. Sarah smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the experienced hunter pause. It wasn't the smile of someone who was afraid or defeated. It was the smile of someone who had just realized they weren't the prey anymore. The combat stimulants were reaching full effect now, and Sarah felt every fiber of her being singing with predatory instincts she never knew she possessed. Her grandmother had been right about one thing. Sometimes the hunted must become the hunter. The Kethmori had made one critical mistake in their calculations about human prey. They had never encountered a human who wanted to hunt them back. The alien raised his weapon, energy crackling along its length, but Sarah was already moving. She rolled to the side as the energy blast scorched the sand where she had been standing, and came up running toward the nearest cover. Behind her, she could hear the other 2 hunters converging on her position. Their clicking communications growing more excited, Sarah's mind raced as the stimulants enhanced her cognitive functions. She had studied these creatures extensively, knew their weaknesses as well as their strengths. They were powerful and fast, but they were also arrogant. They had hunted humans for so long that they had developed predictable patterns. Assuming their prey would always run and hide, they were about to learn that not all humans were the same. The hunt was just beginning. But Sarah Chun was no longer the one being hunted. The Kethmori warriors pursuing her across the red sand of Kepler 438b were about to discover what happened when they chose the wrong human as their prey. They were about to learn why Earth had never been successfully invaded. Despite centuries of attempts by hostile alien species, they were about to meet humanity's true nature, stripped of civilization and reduced to its most primal essence. Sarah felt the ancient instincts of her species awakening, the same drives that had allowed humans to climb to the top of the food chain on a world full of predators. The three Kethmori spread out behind her, confident in their ability to run down their prey. They had no idea they were walking into a trap that had been millions of years in the making. The scarred Kethmori leader stood motionless among the crystal formations, his weapon raised but his hands trembling slightly. In 23 years of hunting across dozens of worlds, he had never lost members of his pack to prey. The concept was so alien to his understanding that his mind struggled to process what had happened. Sarah emerged from behind a crystal spire like a specter of death. Her combat suit stained with alien blood and her eyes blazing with predatory intensity. The stimulants had reached their peak effectiveness, flooding her system with chemicals that transformed her from a human soldier into something far more dangerous. She was evolution incarnate, the end result of millions of years of natural selection on a death world where only the most adaptable survived. The Kethmori hunter's mandibles clicked rapidly as he spoke in heavily accented standard. You are not like other humans. What are you? Sarah tilted her head, studying her final opponent with the cold calculation of a predator evaluating prey. I'm what happens when you hunt something that hunts back. The alien's scarred hide rippled as he processed her words. His species had dominated the galaxy for millennia, ascending to apex predator status on a world where survival required perfect killing instincts. They had hunted countless species to extinction, turning the act into a refined art form, but they had never encountered anything quite like humanity. Sarah began to circle the hunter, moving with fluid grace that seemed impossible for a bipedal species. The combat stimulants had unlocked genetic memories buried deep in her DNA, awakening instincts that dated back to humanity's earliest ancestors. She was channeling millions of years of predatory evolution, refined by the crucible of Earth's unforgiving environment. The Kethmori fired his energy weapon, but Sarah was already moving. She rolled beneath the blast and came up running, using the crystal formations as cover while she closed the distance. The alien spun to track her movement, but she was faster than his weapon could follow. Another shot scorched the air where she had been, and Sarah vaulted over a low crystal formation to land within striking distance. The hunter swung one of his massive claws at her head, but she ducked under the attack and drove her knee into his armored abdomen. The alien staggered backward, more surprised than hurt. His bio-armor had absorbed most of the impact, but the speed and precision of the attack caught him off guard. No prey species had ever willingly engaged him in close combat. Sarah pressed her advantage, weaving between his clumsy swipes while landing precise strikes at weak points in his armor. She had studied Kethmori anatomy extensively during her training, and the stimulants allowed her to exploit every weakness with surgical precision. The hunter's movements became increasingly desperate as he realized he was outmatched. His energy weapon was useless at close range, and his claws couldn't connect with his impossibly agile opponent. For the first time in his long career, he was experiencing something he had only seen in his prey: terror. Sarah's knife flashed out, opening a shallow cut along the alien's flank. Green ichor began to seep through a crack in his bio-armor, and the scent of his blood sent a thrill of savage satisfaction through her enhanced nervous system. She was wounding him, marking him, demonstrating her dominance over a creature that had terrorized the galaxy for generations. The Kethmori stumbled backward. His weapon forgotten as survival instincts older than civilization took control. He turned and ran, his massive form crashing through crystal formations as he fled from something his mind couldn't comprehend. Sarah pursued him with relentless efficiency, never letting him get far enough ahead to use his ranged weapon effectively. She herded him like a predator driving prey toward a killing ground, using the terrain to her advantage while denying him any chance to escape or regroup. The chase led them to the edge of a deep ravine that split the crystalline landscape like a wound. The alien hunter found himself trapped between the precipice and his tormentor, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he realized there was nowhere left to run. Sarah approached slowly, savoring the moment. The combat stimulants were beginning to fade, but her predatory instincts remained sharp. She could smell his fear, hear the rapid beating of his alien heart, see the desperation in his compound eyes. "Please," the hunter whispered in his guttural language, then switched to standard. "I yield. I surrender to you, human." Sarah stopped just out of reach of his claws, her head tilted as she considered his words. "Your species doesn't believe in surrender. You hunt until you kill or die. Those are the only rules you understand." The alien's mandibles trembled as he struggled to find words that might save his life. You are apex predator. I acknowledge your dominance. I will tell others of your kind, warn them away from human space." Sarah laughed, a cold sound that seemed to echo from the depths of humanity's darkest evolution. "You still don't understand. This isn't about territory or dominance. This is about consequences." She raised her knife, its blade still stained with alien blood. "Your species has been hunting mine across the galaxy for decades. Thousands of humans have died for your entertainment. Children, civilians, soldiers who never had a chance to fight back." The Kethmori hunter's eyes widened as he finally understood. This wasn't just about survival or territorial dominance. This was about justice delivered by a species that had been pushed too far. "My grandmother told me stories," Sarah continued, her voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "Stories about what humans used to be before we developed civilization and restraint. About the predators we had to become to survive on a world that wanted to kill us." She took another step forward, and the alien pressed himself against the edge of the ravine. "You've been hunting us because you thought we were weak prey, but you made a fundamental error in your calculations." The combat stimulants might be fading, but Sarah's predatory instincts were fully awakened now. She could feel them burning in her blood like a fever, whispering ancient truths about survival and dominance that civilization had tried to suppress. "You assumed that because we developed technology and society, we had lost our killer instincts. You thought evolution had made us soft." Sarah smiled, and there was nothing human in that expression. "You were wrong." The knife moved faster than the alien's eyes could follow, finding the gap between armor plates at his throat. Green ichor fountained across the crystal formations as the last Kethmori hunter collapsed to his knees, his massive hands clutching uselessly at the wound. Sarah stepped back and watched him die, feeling no satisfaction or remorse. She had simply done what evolution had programmed her to do when threatened by a predator. She had eliminated the threat with brutal efficiency. The alien's final breath rattled through his damaged throat, and silence fell over the crystal amphitheater. Sarah stood alone among the bodies of three of the galaxy's most feared predators. Her knife still dripping with their blood. In the distance, she could hear the whine of approaching engines. The emergency beacon had done its job, drawing both rescue ships and the Kethmori mothership toward her position. But Sarah wasn't concerned about the alien vessel. She had sent a message that would spread throughout their hunting fleet and beyond. Humanity was no longer defenseless prey wandering through the galactic wilderness. They were apex predators who had simply been pretending to be civilized. The Kethmori would tell others of what they had witnessed here. If any of them were brave enough to land and investigate, they would spread the word throughout the hunting casts. Humans were no longer safe quarry. Sarah cleaned her knife on the scarred leader's bioarmor and sheathed it. then began walking toward the sound of approaching engines. The combat stimulants were almost completely metabolized now, but the predatory instincts they had awakened remained as sharp as ever. When the rescue ship landed and the Marines emerged to secure the area, they found Lieutenant Sarah Chun standing calmly among the bodies of 3 dead Kathmori hunters. Her report would be classified at the highest levels and buried in military archives, but word would spread through unofficial channels. Humanity had reminded the galaxy of something important. They hadn't climbed to the top of Earth's food chain by being weak or defenseless. They had earned their position through millions of years of evolutionary warfare against predators that made the Kathmori look like house pets. The extraterrestrial hunters had pursued the soldier, expecting to find easy prey. Instead, they had discovered that when humans were pushed to their limits, they didn't just fight back, they became something far worse than any alien nightmare could imagine. They became themselves,